On this video, let's talk about how you're hurting and feeling overwhelmed, that life is too much. It's a video about suffering and empathy. I'm Alan Robarge, an attachment-focused psychotherapist and a relationship educator, and I like to talk about how to heal attachment injuries and also improve our relationships. And this video is going to attempt to drop down into the process of suffering, the revealing of the layers, the places that hurt and call for attention, and at the same time, ways in which we have an aversion and push away, pull away, hide, enter denial, become buried in an avalanche of distraction, so not to feel that which we're living with, that which we're carrying, that which we know, that which is our history, that which just keeps playing out in pattern after relationship after relationship. And you look in the mirror and you only see what's not there. You look in the mirror and there's that cracked sense of I'm not seeing who I know I need to see, and maybe have never seen the humanity, the face that I want to see. And every day, there's that returning to the routine, to the life, to the engaging, getting by, one step at a time, one day at a time. Trying to live. Saying, I'm doing the best that I can. We're protected by our blinders. We're protected by living on the edges of the shadow. We're protected by not being able to see clearly what is so hurtful to see. And our healing process, or coming into an awareness of consciousness, is the slow removal and expansion, dialing in, the adjusting our vision. And we see suffering, like more suffering, our suffering, the suffering story. And for many of us, then we go beyond the personal and we access the familial, we access the generational, we even access the existential universal of all this suffering. What do you do with it? What do you do with it? And we see it all around us. It's hard to extend the compassion and to be able to drop or disconnect from the self-absorption of attending to the urgency of your own suffering that's vibrating and keeps you on fire and keeps you living a life where you're running and running and running and running and running and running, and you're running with your eyes closed, or maybe at least peeking. Keep going, keep going, keep going. But that's exhausting. It's so exhausting. And there's a brevity, there's a speediness. And it's this speediness that has an intelligence to keep it going so that we don't implode, lose any momentum, fall apart, and get crushed by the grief of the loss of what has never happened and that we don't get and that we haven't been afforded and that has been lost. And for some of us, we do have this spirit to know, and that the healing is in the knowing, and the healing is in the understanding, and the healing is in seeing the patterns. And some of us are a bit verbal, like me, needing to name, what is this? What is this? What is this? What is this? To look at the part that's hurting and to feel that hurt and say, I know, I know. And there's that place we enter the nonverbal of just that echo, that resonance. It's the sound after a locomotive goes through a tunnel. This very loud noise just disappears, and you're left in the shell of sound, the removal of the echo, pure silence. And sometimes that's a little freeing. Sometimes that's, well, I'm intersecting with my humanity. Sometimes there's just profound honesty here. Very, very honest. Sadness is so honest. Sadness is not in denial. Sadness speaks a truth. I'm not going to go as far as say the truth, but a truth. And it's in that quiet, non-moving, central place, perhaps where our consciousness resides, or the seat of existence. It's the you or me, I am you, you or me. It's looking out at the ocean and being able to change perspective, that you are the ocean looking back at yourself on the shore. The interconnected web of all of nature, all of existence now, is here. And at the same time, nothingness, nothing. Just this big, lonely, empty place. We either feel or know, but might even need to name, speaking out into that non-place. Say, I'm hurting here, I'm hurting. What is not mirrored back to you from other people in your life, those around you, those who love you, those who are close. And that we all feel invisible, or at least many of us feel invisible. It's so easy to not see each other's scars, each other's that hurt that you're living with. That doesn't go away. It's here. It's been here. And sometimes it feels like it's getting worse. It's getting bigger. No connection. I'm not known. You're not known. We're not known. There's it's like loneliness is the byproduct of the aloneness. It's like loneliness is a translation and once removed of the experience of, no, I'm just alone. That there is a grief here. And sometimes grief is cleansing and moves, and there's a river that we send our sadness, and the loss floats down the river of grief. It feels like there's a bit of a design or a purpose as a tool. Go to the river. And there's also another kind of grief that has no movement, that has no purpose. It's not a cause and effect. It's not evolving. It's not transitioning beyond anything it already is. It's this place of just completely being its own ultimate experience, that the suffering is not changing, is not going anywhere. And then that's that rather bizarre transition that takes place where it's no longer my grief, my sadness, my wound. It's the grief, the sadness, our wounds. And I get the image of layers of stickers or a film, a plastic film over top of an image. And we, not by right of our own, any action, activity, or doing anything, but this film is just pulled and separated, and we're one layer closer to that as best we can representation of the suffering. We try so many things in this place to get our needs met, to be loved, to love others. And sometimes it gets so confused and misguided, where love equals hurt, or hurt equals showing how much I really love you, or not acknowledging a truth between us is a shared denial, ultimately to protect you, but simultaneously disconnects us from each other. Something we don't have enough of at a time right now in a culture of proliferation of healing ideas and healing work. This over-exploitation of turning it into a work that you will somehow arrive at a release. So this bombardment of information, as if there's a promise in the knowledge, still keeps us removed from context, from being in the context, from being in relationship with a process that's a form of engagement, which activates a creativity, which is a kind of applied learning. It's an applied healing. It's an applied suffering. It's not suffering for suffering's sake, or suffering that only keeps us paralyzed and crippled. Like the song, The Cripple and the Starfish, and I'm a star, I keep growing back like a starfish. You cut off my finger, cut off my arm. And despite all of this hurt, despite all that I have been the projection of your rejection, how I have been the projection of your aggression, or how I have been the projection of your missed life, missed needs, missed opportunities. As if it's been my job to be the repository of your disappointments. The severing of my hand, the severing of my arm, the severing of humanity's arm, a complete disconnect that I don't know who I am in this place. I have no self. This is the annihilation. Annihilation through suffering. Not ego transcendence and compassion, but the great trampler trampling you, making wine out of your body, stepping on the grapes. a reference to a Rumi poem. More suffering on top of more suffering on top of more suffering. And we have those moments we say, I can't take this anymore. I can't take it anymore. And sometimes in this place, then, relationships fall apart. Almost like sand in your fingers, trying to hold on to sand, that this is the relationship. And it's gone. It implodes. To feel so tortured and hurt and distracted and burdened by your specific suffering, and trying to find the suffering story to explain it, to have it make sense. And its annihilation is that it just makes all your relationships fall through your fingers like sand, and you're left again with nothing. And you might even voice and tell others, no relationship anymore. I'm only in relationship with my suffering now. I need quiet. I need alone. I'm already alone, but I need more alone. Some great intelligence to that, slowing down, bringing aloneness to the aloneness, and then also simultaneously creating isolation, where there was already a falling apart, a evaporation of potential connection with others, potential relationship, that is gone. And this great internal pull between I need others, I don't need others, I need others, I need you, I don't need you, I need you, I don't even have me, how could I need you, I don't even allow myself to need me. And that echo, that's not even our voice, that's inherited as a human, that says, love me, love me, love me, which then at some point changes and says, how could you not love me? Which at some point changes and we say, how do I not love me? That to make the suffering manageable, to make the wound, the hurt, the disconnect manageable, we must disconnect from ourselves. This ongoing, repeated self-denial, the daily self-denial. I'm not going to see myself reflected in the mirror. I'm not here. To the point where I no longer seek out mirrors. And sometimes we have a moment, might surprise us, might be spontaneous, might be completely random in the world, might be through kind of purity of a child laughing, or the purity of a fresh morning with the sunrise. And for a brief moment, a brief bright moment, you feel a bit of possibility. And maybe also these moments, the human connection, the relationship, the other, you come together and connect. And there's this real big hope, albeit brief, usually brief. It just says, maybe we're going to know each other here. Maybe you're going to know me. Maybe I'm going to know you. Maybe we don't have to go it alone. And again, like sand in your hands, that potential and promise of a relationship to inspire, to echo out into an expanse of this too is workable, this too is workable. And when that relationship implodes and we're coming right back to, no, there's no promise here. Your suffering is just too big and too great to let others in. My suffering is just too big and too great to let others in, to let you in, for you to let me in, for all of us to let each other in, and that we are in this great marriage, this incredible marriage with the wound. My aloneness, my absence, my rejection. For some, my abuse, my there's nothing there, my blank, nothing there. You don't have words, there's just no words. If before I said there needs to be a context in order to enter the process, the context as history, experience, the dynamics, it's all based on the phrase, it depends. Healing information means nothing. There are no truisms. We can disprove every single thing based upon the context. Because it depends. It depends. What you thought was the necessary path and the healthy thing to do ends up not being the healthy thing to do. Because it depends. It depends. It depends on all of these other conditions, these arising conditions that both collectively then bring out the suffering process, the suffering experience, but also simultaneously based upon the context and all of the conditions that come together that when they arise is also the healing. But it doesn't exist as an idea. It's not something that you tell yourself. It's not something that you read in the book. It's not something that anyone else teaches you with regards to the path. There's no path. There's no work. There's no congratulating ourselves on doing the work. There's process. And the process must create an exchange. The same way I'm trying in this moment as best I can to exchange with the activation of my suffering to connect with your suffering, that together we're having this back and forth experience. I'm exchanging with this that's here, this the hurt that, yes, it's personal, but it's bigger, it's collective. It's your hurt too. I know it is. So the word relationship, I'm in relationship with the suffering. Not to change it, not to make it better, not to make it go away, not to one-up it, not to beat it, but to have an interactive experience with it. The exchange is, it tells me what it needs. I don't tell it what I want in order how to feel better. I want to feel what it is feeling. I often say with clients, the grief will let you go when it's done with you. How do I know if a relationship is over? The relationship lets me go. The relationship is over. It has decided to release you. And I sometimes refer to this suffering as a claw. It's a clamp. And there's a Leonard Cohen poem that says, "This is it." He says, I want my clamp to release from your clamp. That unmovable, immovable attachment. I'm not letting go. I'm not letting go here. I want this. I want this. And then at some point we realize what we are clamped onto is the suffering. It is the wound. Wait a minute, how can it be the wound? I thought it was the promise. I thought it was the other. I thought it was creating life and relationship and possibility. No, you just ended up getting tighter and more intimate with your own wound, your own suffering. Coming back around to the title of this video and also intention is, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I am sorry you're hurting so much. To look in the mirror, to hear my own words, for you to take on these words as if you're looking in the mirror and you say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry to me, I'm sorry to myself. That sometimes it feels that we are challenged and built to endure this sick, suffering story. Trying at times to say, well, it has meaning and purpose and lesson. Trying at times to say even, oh, it's a gift that I would have never been able to know this part of myself if my spirit hadn't been crushed in the previous relationship. Which sometimes feels like suffering itself has a PR firm and we're putting out a spin, trying to tell the story in such a way to say, well, there's got to be meaning here. There's got to be some kind of purpose, because all I feel is this incredible, bottomless emptiness when it repeatedly just doesn't make sense to be denied. And then fill in the blank of whatever you're being denied. To be denied that. You know, that one. That connection, that life, that relief, that health, that healing, that love, that relationship. No. You're still here, not getting any of it. You're just you and your suffering. And sometimes it's not this empty, expansive place that echoes where you can't hear yourself. Sometimes it's the middle of a raging fire. You're on fire. Your body is on fire. Your mind is on fire. You set fire to things all around you. You scream fire. All of these are adaptive responses, attempting to make sense or somehow manage. Maybe if I combust, maybe if I blow up this fire, it's so hot, it's so big, it's so rageful. What do you mean I'm not going to get it again? What do you mean that old hurt and old story and old history? What do you mean that it's coming back as strong as ever? And it becomes my relationship partner. That ends up being my lover, my beloved. So we keep returning to a context. How does this fit in with all of the pieces? And we start to engage a process of curiously allowing ourselves to be influenced, to accept the influence of the suffering, and to experiment with, keep seeing those the layers coming off. And with each layer, there is a relationship. There is an experiential, interactive exchange. And the exchange sometimes is wisdom. The exchange sometimes is a it's that release of the grief. It just wells up, and it's like vomiting grief. And sometimes you just can't believe that there's so much sadness. And again, at some point, initially what feels like personal sadness, your sadness, it transitions into the sadness, our sadness, universal sadness. There is a lot of suffering. We are conduits for suffering. Our whole life is designed to tiptoe around, to defend, to maneuver, to protect, to dodge the current suffering and more suffering. And some of us, it's a game of one, a party of one, a solitary experience. It's just you and your mind. It's just you witnessing your own annihilation. And many, many moments to say, I don't think I can take anymore. I don't think I can take anymore. So the purpose of this video is to say, I know you are here. I know you feel this too. I know you're lost. I know you have nothing. I know that you're a wanderer. I know you're longing for a friend. I know you don't allow yourself to have hope. I know you need to disconnect from life and push others away just so this suffering doesn't devour you. And I know you need aloneness, alone time, push others away. We push each other's away. As sacrifice at the altar for the suffering itself, to give yourself to the suffering, not to give yourself to the possibility of relationship or connection or community. And that you are me and I am you. We are each other. Your healing is my healing, and my healing is your healing. This is how we both benefit. It doesn't always evolve into the release or the healing as completion. Sometimes it opens up to just more healing, more suffering. Which I often talk about this as the great cosmic joke, the great cosmic middle finger of suffering. The existence pain of what's the point of existence if you can't direct being loved and loving the way that you want. and trying to constantly readjust the story you tell yourself about how you don't have love in your life. And that reoccurring plug yourself back in, find some energy to put one foot in front of the other. And for many of us, then live behind the facade of the fake existence. I'm fine. I'm fine. No, really, I'm fine. And I can see you're working really hard at being fine too. Yeah, things are going, yeah, things are good. We know that's not true. A lot of pretending. The suffering is so big, so crushing, so disconnecting, so lonely, so without relationship, that we just have to pretend we're fine. So this video is an effort, an attempt to invite a context, to invite a process, to invite exchanging with your suffering, to drop down into that complete unworkable place. There's no work to do here. There's an honesty about how hurt we are. And to say, I can join you there. And I know in this moment you're joining me here. And we sometimes step back and say, this is the reality of suffering. To have clear seeing, to have naked seeing, to have raw seeing, to have unobstructed seeing. This is the suffering, this is the suffering, this is the suffering. And we're oftentimes puppets and animated and just trying to dance, just keep it going, spin the plates, be a puppet. The emperor's new clothes. Everything's fine. Don't look, don't look over here. And for some of us, we can't keep pretending. Or life circumstance slaps us in the face once again. And there's that very humble and also punishing feeling of like, well, I was just trying. I was just trying to make it a little different. I was just trying to reach out. I was just trying to be known. I was just trying to say goodbye to the wound. I was just trying to experiment with an exchange of warmth and connection, which many times is still some brief, bright burst, bold moment of a connection that is what it is and does not sustain itself. And like sand in your hand, that again brings you back to nothing. There's a power in the surrender. The goal is not to feel empowered, because then we're manipulating it again. This constant manipulation keeps us once removed from being in the honesty of the experience. But nonetheless, we cannot help but know to enter this place, release in the surrender, to release and be surrendered here, also then at times simultaneously creates a kind of removed transcendence. So it's not so much about changing, fixing, getting better, feeling good, being your best. But in that transcendent, removed place, as like pure observer, there's a disidentification of I'm not this suffering. although it is still here, that is not the only way that I orient to the world. That's not the only way that I know myself. That's not the only way that I love you. And that's not the only way I create relationship. And for most of us, that transcendence of surrendering to then feel empowered by some kind of removed observer self to just see it as it is, like pure raw, well, this is the way it is, and I'm not in this moment tortured or wounded by it. I'm able to assess it as the removed experiencer, not the experience. But it doesn't sustain itself, that the channel gets switched, the suffering takes hold, we enter the repetition. And we're right back to where we started. You're hurting, you're hurting, you're hurting. I know. It's not so much our job to fight against and conquer the suffering. It exists here as a truism, a truth. It exists here as a condition of the whole experience. There is a practice of being in the rhythm of knowing that that suffering is there and all around us, and at the same time that that suffering is an illusion, not real. The manifestation, the perpetual repetition of trauma mind. And sometimes we must take a break from trying to solve the very confusing, challenging math equation to figure out how to do that, how to solve that math problem so that it equals freedom, release, love, okayness, joy. It's the first time in this moment, in this whole video, saying the word joy. When's the last time you felt joy? Or hang out with joy? Or joy seeks you out. Joy comes and finds you. Thank you for participating, being here, bringing your humanity through the viewing. Might or might not have made sense at all. I don't know. So, more videos to come. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.